take two. Hello, future people. Jason the Bruce here with Getting Tabled, and today I'm bringing you another Getting Tabled guide. But this time I'm going to concentrate on a portion of the hobby. There's a lot of sections of the hobby where people that are new try to ask questions, and as opposed to getting advice, tend to get flooded with opinions instead. Now, before you have a go, hear me out. For people that are experienced in the hobby, we all have very strong opinions about the brushes that we use because of the experiences that we've had. I am going to mention some of those of my own later, and then explain, and I'm explaining now why I'm not excluding those ranges from the discussion. The problem with giving opinions without context is that the experiences that you've had aren't always the reputation that a company has. I have a very strong opinion about a paint range on one of arguably the two most positively considered companies in this area. I've never had anything but problems with the range. I will never touch them again. But I'm also the only person that I know of that's had these problems. Therefore, I have to consider that I'm probably wrong. Or just had a bad experience. For people that are new to the hobby, one thing you need to get across your mind very quickly is that the perfect brush does not exist. Most brushes are using natural hairs. Natural products are always going to be flawed in some extent. There are synthetic brushes out there as well, but they are not always the best thing to be using either. I'm going to be concentrating on brush selection here, as in the ranges that are available and what you should be considering. I will come back a bit later with a tutorial on some simple tips on how to use them and so forth. But let's start talking about some companies that make brushes, shall we? So, we're starting with arguably the most obvious. If you're in this hobby, there's a 9 out of 10 chance that you were probably brought in by Games Workshop. When you're in the Games Workshop stores, there is only one brand they will ever talk about. If you ask about another brand, you will probably get told that they can't comment. It is what it is. I'm not having a go. I'm not having a go. The way that the Games Workshop bubble works is that the whole way that that structure is supposed to be designed is to stop you looking outside of that bubble. It's a sales thing. They try to do everything they can in-house so that you have no reason to look elsewhere. Now, the experienced hobbyists out there that are outside of the Games Workshop bubble will probably tell you that this range of brushes is extremely average. And I'm not going to disagree with them on that. These are not bad brushes. I am not a fan of them, but they're not bad. They are not awful brushes. They are, however, massively overpriced in every region of the world. Like, seriously. These are Australian dollars that you're looking at, just for the record. But the fact that they are trying to charge this sort of money, like $50, $39.50, like these brushes aren't even worth half that. Or even close to it. Now again, these are not awful brushes. But if I was to tell you that I recommend for you to buy these, I would be doing you a great disservice. I would recommend almost every line of brushes over these. If they were priced more fairly, sure, maybe. But look, they're not awful brushes. They are very average. If you already have some of these brushes and you've spent a lot of money on them, then get your use out of them. don't replace them until they eventually get to the point where you don't have a choice. Don't throw them out though. Leave them as dry brushes. Leave them as things to mix your paint. Leave them for things that are going to ruin them once they are destroyed. Because you've already spent too much money on this. Don't go throwing it away now, obviously. Get your money's worth out of it. And for the people that have never looked outside of the Games Workshop bubble, you're probably falling off your chairs right now. No, these are actually the real prices. The recommended retail price is the actual prices. Army Painter, again, are not perfect brushes. They're very average. It's not a bad thing. They're very average. And I mean, literally, they are very average. They're middle of the range. I have used these. They've worked fine for me. They are not a line that I purchase any longer because they just didn't suit me. That doesn't make them bad, though. It's just not what I wanted. When it comes to painting detail, if you are someone that doesn't trust your hand and you want a very thin brush for something like the eyes, then Army Painter have a brush that almost nobody else does, which is the Psycho. Now, this image is zoomed in quite significantly. On a normal thing, all you would have is essentially a line. It's ridiculously small, which is its whole selling point. Personally, I didn't enjoy using this because my hand is too shaky, and I found that this was actually harder for me to use personally. But I would still highly recommend giving this a try, even if you don't end up liking it. It's not that expensive, and if you're someone that struggles with the small stuff, this might be your answer. One of the brands that you will find mentioned probably more than any other is Windsor Newton. They have arguably the best reputation of any paintbrush in the world. They are easily the largest paintbrush company in the world. They've been going for a very long time. I resisted Windsor Newton for a very long time because they're also expensive. In saying that, let's go back one step on this page and pick the most expensive brush they have here. So the most expensive brush, which is a fat, thick brush, not that thick obviously, is still not as expensive as the prices we were looking at earlier, which was that one. Now, personally, I prefer a 2. Personally. With good quality brushes, you will find that they have a nice, strong tip, and so long as you're careful with your brush, that tip is the only thing that you ever really need. I definitely highly recommend Windsor Newton. Like I said, I had fought and resisted using them for a very long time because I just couldn't understand why they were so expensive. The one that we have coming up next is a brand that I have a very strong opinion about. It's a very negative opinion, but like I said a minute ago, I'm talking about this brand because they have a very good reputation. My problems that I had with them are my own, but don't let my experiences sway your opinions. The next brush we are talking about is arguably the number 2 reputation, and that's Raphael. Now, the problem that I've owned 3 Raphael brushes, and I purchased the first one. It came the moment that I stuck it in the water, it went and it never went back. For those that are wondering, yes, obviously I tried to fix it. Like literally the moment it touched the water, it just the bristles essentially exploded. It was replaced by the store immediately because they also obviously tried to fix it as well because it's very unusual. And this happened in the store. I hadn't even left the store yet. This isn't a matter of, well, I was just rough. I mean, I have been rough with brushes in the past. That's not what happened here. I never had a chance to use this. And I complained. Those like, oh, no, it's fine. You've just got to... Oh, okay. No, that's fair. Here, have a new one. And I took that new one home because I was leaving at the time. And it looked fine at the time. By the time I got it home, it was split and I had the same problem. I purchased a replacement and had the same thing happen after the first time I had used it. So that one, fair enough, I might have got paint deeper than I should have. I don't believe I did, but it's possible. We all make mistakes and we don't always necessarily notice. So, like I said, I have had very bad experiences with this brand. So why on earth am I telling you that I'm still going to recommend them? Because I know other people that were buying these brushes the same day that I purchased mine, over the same weeks that I had purchased mine from the same batch. When I mentioned the following week the trouble that I'd been having, everybody was massively surprised. I'm the only one that I've ever known that's had that problem, and I know several people have brought not just the same paintbrushes, but from the same batch that mine came from. Because this stuff all comes in batches, in boxes. And none of them had the same problems that I did. So clearly, the reputation of this brand, not just online, but in person, is very different from the experience that I had. Therefore, I have to believe that my experience is a freak experience. The same thing can happen in any industry, but let's move on. This is a smaller company, and if you was to purchase them, they come like this. Now, no, this is not some sponsor thing. These are brushes that I purchased myself about 1.5 years ago. I would say that these are a little better quality than your Games Workshop and so forth. They're definitely a more premium one. I would not put these on the same level as the last two companies that I spoke of, or the one that's following. But the price that you're looking at here is for a 5-piece set. This is an American company. So if you're from the US and you're trying to find a decently priced brush, this is definitely a good choice. From this, I have used the 2 and the 1. I haven't used the other 3 because I don't use small brushes myself very often. But I brought the set because, I mean, at that price, why would I not buy the set? Especially when I was paying postage as well. They're not the only brushes that I use. I do have other brushes here that I use. I've got a couple of different brands that I use now. Broken Toe are a company that I have recommended more than once. I don't know if I've spoken specifically about them on the podcast. I probably have. I know we definitely covered them when they stopped making brushes at one point. There was a point where getting the hair was becoming too difficult. So they just chose to step away. And myself and several others were extremely disappointed by that because at that particular point in time, this was the only line of brushes that I used. Price-wise, £17, £13. So these are more expensive, but personally, I found these... I love these. The only negative comment I have ever seen is that the head size on these are slightly smaller than Windsor Newton. Now, the size numbers that you find on the website is not some sort of industry standard. It's one of those things where it's just kind of supposed to represent the size of the brush. If you have a size 2 from this, a size 2 from Raphael, a size 2 from Windsor and Newton, you're probably going to find that all of them are slightly different because it's a company thing, not an industry thing. They do try to stick to similar sizes, but there's no actual, you will only have this many brushes in a size 2. That doesn't exist. It never has existed that I've ever seen, unless I'm wrong on that. But quality-wise, these definitely have a nice, solid quality to them. The MK3 is because it's the third version of their brush. They've made little changes over time. Personally, I prefer the size 2. I'm sure that's going to be extremely shocking at this point. But that's genuinely what I recommend. My advice to people that are new to the hobby would be to try new things. Don't just follow the advice of people that tell you that X brand is the only brand that's worth touching. I'm not saying don't listen to those people. I'm just saying try other things, because the experiences that they have and the painting style that they have may not match with what you actually do in person. I have not spoken about dry brushes in this at all, and there's a reason for that. Personally, I would not recommend to spend large money on a dry brush. The whole way that the dry brush works is extremely aggressive and extremely violent, and it destroys brushes. If you've dry brushed, you've probably started to notice that with your brushes already. But I would not recommend spending big money on a dry brush, because it's just not going to be worth it at the end of the day. My general advice would be to either buy a cheap, hard flash brush from an art store, or one of the cheaper, smaller makeup brushes from wherever. I would not spend big money on it. Don't buy one of these huge, massive ones. Buy just like something about that sort of size. I would buy a couple of each, because there's benefits to one and the other, and see which one you feel you get a better result from. Try them both. There is a company out there called Artis Opus that sell a line of brushes for something scary. I'm not saying that line of brushes is bad. I'm just saying I wouldn't spend that sort of money on a dry brush, because you won't get the benefit from it. The whole point of a dry brush is very, very aggressive. Therefore, don't spend big money on a brush that won't last. You won't get your money's worth out of it. That's all I'm saying. For washes, you want a larger brush again. So something that's significantly larger than your regular size. The synthetic brushes in those particular cases, there's not really a lot of companies out there that make expensive synthetic brushes. They're usually seen as something that's lesser. I wouldn't actually say that a synthetic brush is lesser in any means. It's a matter of personal preference. When it comes to the actual brush, your tip is the most important thing. If you can get there, and if you can learn to use your brush well, then you can get just as much detail out of a larger brush that you can out of a smaller one. You, generally speaking, don't want your paint to be going any further than where that tip stops. You definitely don't want it anywhere around this metal piece, because that's what will destroy your brush. But like I said, my personal advice would be to try different brands, find something that suits you. If that means that you're trying brushes that you haven't heard of, hey, why not? But my first advice, first and foremost, would be to find something that's in stock in your local area that you can get your hands on personally. Because if every time you need to buy a new brush you have to wait for it to come from the other end of the world, that's going to get very old very quickly. So the hobby stores that you have in your area, the art stores that you have in your area, see what they're actually stocking. I know Windsor Newton is on Amazon. I believe Raphael is too. I could be wrong on that. Obviously, I haven't checked for reasons that I've already spoken about. Look around, try different things, and find something that fits your style. That's it from me. I will talk about the more simple techniques for using a brush at a later stage. And until next time, try to get some more hobby done. We here at Getting Tabled would like to thank all of you for continuing to support our content. Whether that be through simple actions such as liking and subscribing, or sharing our content with other people that you think would enjoy it, or to something larger like supporting us on Patreon. We have a Patreon which is only $2 a month. That gives you early access to roughly 80% of the videos that go live on our YouTube, and early access to every video edition of the podcast we release. If you're new to our channel and you'd like to find us on other services, then the best place to start would be Facebook. Facebook is where all of our content is shared first. It's where you will find us the most active when social media is concerned, and it has links to everything else that I'm about to talk about. You can, of course, get in touch with us via email. If you have questions about the hobby, our place in the hobby, or even if you've got questions about the content that we've been featuring, then please feel free to reach out. If you have a question that's appropriate, it's possible it might even be answered live during one of our podcasts. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram, both at Getting Tabled. Instagram is a service that we've only joined very recently. Neither of these services are as active as our Facebook page, but we are using them, and we are trying to use them more at all times. Again, our team really wants to thank everybody for supporting us. It's very much appreciated. And until the next time we see you,